Afternoon, dear colleagues. I am Oleg Novozhilov, and I will moderate this session devoted to the subject of what is a modern fish farmer like. Our session is held as part of the Fisheries Skills International Educational Forum. We have already taken part in various plenary sessions, and a lot has already been said about the importance of aquaculture. And if we recall the plenary session from yesterday, we will know that today the fish production equals that of aquaculture production. That's why we can say that the future of aquaculture is determined by one factor, that is to say, by the fish farmer. And that is why we are going to discuss now the changes in fish farmer training. Honestly, I am personally involved in this subject because I work for the uh, Institute of Fisheries and Aquaculture of the Kaliningrad University. I need to learn from you now what you want from us, from our universities. What are the requirements that you have for the specialties that we are to shape so that we could properly structure our programs, making our graduates conform to your requirements. Today we'll have 3 online and 3 offline speakers. The first speaker will be Sergei Kondratenko, Deputy CEO for production of Polex Aqua from Kaliningrad. Also present here is Anton Alexeyev, head of Aquaferma Farm. Also Daniil Zhachkin, CEO of First Fish Processing Plant. And there are, as I said, 3 online speakers. It will be Frederick James Francis, President of the Singapore Nautical Institute, President of the World Maritime Heritage Society, Professor Emeritus. Let's give an applause to Mr. Francis. He can hear us, I hope. And also Nikolai Barulin is present with us online, Professor and Director of Ecology and Fisheries Department of Belarusian Agricultural Academy. And finally, it is Zakhar Zakharcheny, Director of Aquaculture Group from Belarus. Well, as to start with, I suggest Sergei Kondratenko to take the floor to tell us about the requirements that today's employers have with respect to fish farmers. Thank you. Well, I am taking the floor now in 2 capacities, both as a representative of an operational company which started its work at the beginning of this year. You will find more in details on the slide in this here. And for more than 20 years, I have worked for the Kaliningrad State Technical University, that in the past was called the Fishery Institute of Kaliningrad. Now we are so I work there for Fishery and Aquaculture the Institute. And by will of accident, I have been involved since recently in practical activities, not only in the establishment of a fishing fleet, and also in the preparation of the feasibility studies, in the obtention of approvals, all kinds of specialist technical reviews, and the launching of various systems. At the same time, I have also taken part in the selection of specialists for the sector, because our fishery farm is based on a recirculating water supply system. Those of you who have dealt with them know that all kinds of equipment are used there. We needed to select the people who knew well fish biology, who had at least elementary knowledge of the equipment used for such farms. And from the very beginning, we understood that above all, those should be people who are interested and quite responsible. Speaking about my today's presentation, as a university professor, I actually started by studying the regulations on the subject that regulate the educational process, and I found that most of the requirements for the specialists for the aquaculture sector are described in professional standards. In 2003, some of you probably know about it. 7 professional standards were approved. It was in 2014. Hydrobiologist, fish farmer, fish engineer, ichthyologist, gyrochemist, microbiologist, and ichthyopathologist. And then new standards were approved, and for levels 4 to 7, a set of requirements for work and the skills that the specialists should get, those trained in water, bioresources, and aquaculture. And from my practical experience, I can say that in the final analysis, the new professional standard fully reflects the requirements, at least from my perspective. It fully reflects the requirements both as a university professor and active fish farmer. They fully conform to the requirements of the market, with the exception of the recirculating water supplies circuit. The only thing that should be added to this professional standard is the development of adequate water treatment stations, air blowers, ozone providers, oxygenators, microfilter, etc. Obviously, fish farmers should have elementary knowledge of this kind of technology, certainly without too much detail. And besides, fish farmers are not supposed to be are not supposed to have experience in maintaining such equipment. They should know how to properly operate them, They should make sure that everything works as it should, and they should have certainly fundamental knowledge in biology for the small set of fishes that are used in such plants. This is our one of our facilities, a smaller part of our complex. Basically, that's all I wanted to mention now. Thank you.
I just want to recap on what you have just said, seeing that you actually are satisfied with everything, you are content with everything you have. Well, I am satisfied with people who I hired, who I selected. I selected them from a very long list, and I used some principles to select these people. These are our graduates. I was confident that our graduates know fish biology at least very well, at least the fish we have in our country. And again, this is a problem always on the combination of practical knowledge, practical skills, and knowledge. I fully support the people who discussed this at this forum and on the pages of the magazines that were distributed here. We saw several articles of our fish farmers, specialists in the field of aquaculture, mentioning that we would need some new specialists, specialists with a new mindset, with a new set of practical knowledge. Where do they get this knowledge from? Because working in the university, I saw that we had several industrial practices, some of them covering like half a year, but now the internship, the production internship is only 3 weeks. Of course, it's not possible to get any knowledge during this short internship for new specialists. Fish farming and aquaculture is the field that should attract people. Trainers, teachers, not just need to inject this knowledge in students, but they need to make those students interested in what they're doing. Well, it's not possible to do that in 3 weeks, and well, we understand that when there is such a short internship, shop managers are just telling these young guys not to touch anything. So we need to really extend the number of practical skills, of practical trainings. We are discussing that in Kaliningrad. We are discussing that in Kaliningrad region we have good designers, we have good engineers, and also our graduates are working there. They are designing their fishery skills. We have producers of main elements such as the fish farming basins, pools, and again we have feed producers. And not long ago we now had this new director of this company, and he is at this forum. So we are luckily trying to overcome all these issues in the context of these acute needs. So we are forming this aquaculture cluster. Companies are working together in this cluster, and all of them understand that we need to train specialists in this area. There are not many specialists like that. And indeed, the specialists who would want to work in this area is not many. There are not many people like that, because this area, this domain is very narrow. We remember some managers telling about those benefits, giving flats, apartments to these people, and still these people leave. These people leave their jobs because, well, students today are very much different from what we had during the Soviet time. Today, we have many other aspects that are really important, and that are really important for people remaining at their jobs and not leaving their jobs. So the key thing is to form this internal motivation in people for them to start wanting to work at their workplaces, at their jobs. 75% at our department was men, but now about 80% of our students are women, are ladies. So we have this gender mix, which has also changed. But even among ladies, we have women who want to work in these areas, living for distant areas of the south, of the Far East, and they tell us on a regular basis that they made the right choice. Now, do you have anything to add, Mr. Alexeyev, on that as a representative of employers? Well, my fish farm consists of the technology of this so-called UZV technology, which is the recirculating aquaculture system. One of the fish farmers not long ago left us, and he had been working with the system for the past 18 months, and he was replaced by a young person who spent several months to understand the system. He was self-learning, and then after that he was like coming up to me and telling me about possible improvements according to his views. Well, he told me that there could be some improvements. I was like, everything should be in order. We produce like 450 kilos. So he wanted to ask my permission for these changes. So he performed some changes, and in 2 months the yield was 750 kilos, which is he increased 50% more productivity. He started checking hydrochemical indicators more often and feeding fish more often, also tracking the sediment. He calculated everything more properly with the switching of the drum filter. He added some elements using the support of our engineers. So the costs of these improvements were not high, but the yield was increased by almost 50%. So one thing is when you have a good car, and the other thing is when you're going to drive a good car. This is another thing. Again, the human factor in the field of high-tech fish farming is really very critical. It is probably one of the most important factors. No matter what money is needed and what kind of super technologies are needed in terms of that, if you don't have a particular person having the sufficient knowledge and living this system to make this system as efficient as possible, if you don't have such a person who is living at this, who's living through this, you won't reach big success. Now, a question. So what should be the qualities of these people? First of all, people should be fans of what they're doing. Everything else related to salaries, related to other conditions people set for living, for anything else. People need to be over-enthusiastic. They need to be enthusiastic, and we need to support their enthusiasm even when they come to work for us. So the first thing people ask is about salary, is about where they're going to be to live. When I'm asked this question at an interview, I am not interested in such a person. We now have a person working for us. He used to work in this area in Ukraine for 7 years. Now he has moved to our region. So we are going to work with this person. He contacted us about the vacancy. He wasn't asking us about the salary because he is very enthusiastic about that. Well, there are few such people. Indeed, yes, for us as an employer, these people are gems for us. For us, we have this Z generation, which are very pragmatic, and of course, among this Z generation is not very pragmatic. So people need to feel that they're needed, and they need to derive some satisfaction from what they're doing. I saw some young people who like visiting what they have, who like doing what they're doing. They like reaching results, and I do not agree that we have a new generation. today. It's not for everyone, of course. So, well, the question is, where do we need to instill this culture? Whether it's in universities. We have Daniil sitting right behind, next to me. So, out of about 50% of the interns leave in the first week, but one of 8 interns actually succeed, and I select these interns every year. So about 15% of these people, of these new generation representatives, are potentially successful fish farmers, successful specialists that we would want. The speaker is not using the mic, so the translation is not possible. I'm in contact with many students. I've been working in research for many years, working in the field of fisheries. When I talked to students, about 80% of students are telling me that they are not going to work as professionals. They just want to get a diploma and then work as merchandisers or marketing specialists. So this is my personal experience. So we need just to identify these people who are enthusiastic about the profession, but, well, there are not many people who are real enthusiasts. So these are the times we're living in. During the Soviet time, it was different. The system of fisheries was different. We organized symposiums, we organized conferences. Well, we are having such a conference, and the fish farming, where the science of fish farming was very much developed at the moment. Today we are having a different time. So this is just our reality. It's very hard to identify these people, and we need to work them on an individual basis. We need to pay attention to them. These people, these young people, are sometimes very proud of themselves, but we all need to tailor ourselves to this modern reality. We remember the late Professor Coleman from Poland. They had their own farms at universities. This is one way. There is another way, which is more costly, probably organizing internships at farms, which is possible. Well, everything depends on what would happen. Of course, we understand that probably this is not something that brings a lot of money, but this should be something people like doing. Are any other perspectives, any other views? Hello, dear colleagues. I'd like to express my own opinion from two sides, as a business representatives and as an education representatives. The secondary, the medium level, we train people for many companies, training technicians in fish farming, specialists in industrial fishing and fisheries. So this gap between businesses and education is attributed to businesses and education. Both sides are to blame. When there are state standards developed, and in our country, we have this notion of licensing, this notion of licensing. I was part of this process some time ago when we sent those professional standards. The number of comments was not that big. I understand business. I understand companies because we are always busy growing fish and overcoming our problems. As for the educational part, the educational side, in my opinion, we probably couldn't have this efficient work done before, just working using some previous approaches. And this is really the issue. This is really the problem that is now very obvious. Because of the collapse of the Soviet Union, we faced some transformations. So indeed, this issue, this problem is really very acute. In many companies, there is this very high talent shortage. Fish farmers, speaking of that, it's not a prestigious profession that we pay a little money. This is not true, indeed. At good farms with good profits, people get good salaries in this area. Let's make no mistake on that. Now, the question is whether fish farms are interested in getting this talent? Are they interested? Many people are asking me about this. They're asking me whether it's possible to provide internships during 2 or 3 weeks, but I have never heard a suggestion to create network educational opportunities when people can learn theory, can spend a month learning theory, and then spend 3 months at a fish farm, continuing their trainings on site. And this is how they prepare their talent for them. The educational cluster, which is which includes 5 elements, including the Agency for Fishery, there is the Ministry of Education, there is the educational organizations for the Ministry of Education and Science. All these educational institutions are acting separately. When they're addressing us together, I work at St. Petersburg Marine and Fishing Industry College. I have a lot of demand from employers. I have employers who like working with our graduates, and there is this person who is really very successful now. He is assembling an equipment piece in Astrakhan again. So they select our school as employers. Employers need to make those students enthusiastic about their further work, and this is the work of teachers to do that. Teachers need to do that. They need to instill this a love of this educational process. The same issue with education. People just deliver their trainings and they leave, and that's it. I understand that education today is much different. There are a lot of problems there with material support, with very weak departments in terms of development. Yet businesses need to be interested in getting those talent out of universities. If we organize trainings for students on site, showing them all practical aspects, if we do that, I'd like to tell you outwardly that they get enthusiastic and ready to work. Some of my students combine learning with working in shifts. There are different companies, something like Baltysky, Bereg, Rodino, and other companies in this area who work with our graduates. I have a whole line of employers, and my to-be students enroll a year or 18 months before the start of their education. So the demand is very high. Again, enthusiasm is very good, but let's come back to those skills. What kind of skills are needed? I want to hear this from businesses. What kind of skills are needed? The only thing I hear until now is that people who are enthusiastic, you are satisfied with these specialists. I'm not telling you that they're enthusiastic, they're over-enthusiastic. Well, you cannot tell it very clearly. So a person spending like 18 years with their parents, then come to learn at a university, are actually not that enthusiastic. Some of students enroll to university with a purpose, but sometimes people just tell you that they failed at some other university, and well, they are not ready to work in the fish industry, to clean fishes. You need to grow these people, and this should start with the school bench when they start learning at a university, at a school, whether it's a industry relevant or industry specific school or any other school. In the modern world, what kind of skills are needed? So this is a very good question according to the educational standard that is used in the St. Petersburg University and in the Higher School of Economics, is about having this universal soldier being able to lift feeds, and of course we need to do that. It needs to be done, and fish needs to be fed. And this person should also have technical skills to be able to understand how everything works. So this person should be really universal according to the standard. If there is a pool there in the basin, seeing that the fish is behaving strangely, so this should be some universal soldier acquiring and having as many skills as possible. Any educational organization is focusing on a particular region in which they're working. So this is the full-fledged production capacity. So educational universities need to train universal specialists ready to work in all regions. I understand that during the training, they learn different types of fish, they learn their behavior, but their training should enable them to work in any region. They could work at any farm located at any region. If they visit the farm, they would be easily possible for them to focus very clearly and start working.
We don't have this system today. After my meetings with various fish farmers, I understand that in most cases they are keen on the region where they operate. However, when we select them, they should understand that they need universal knowledge. And now, I'd like to give the floor to our online speaker, Mr. Frederick James Francis, to listen to his opinion about the current fish farmer, what he or she should be like.
Вы готовы?
Are you ready?
Greetings from Singapore. I'm just putting on my slides to share with you all. Okay, I got to go on F7, is it? Let me check. How do I put full screen for the picture? F5. Yep. Okay, can you all see my screen now? Okay, so thank you for inviting me. Greetings from Singapore. And I've been hearing about what other people have been saying. And yes, I agree. There is a problem or a perception of fishermen. Firstly, let me thank the organizers for inviting me. And today, when I speak, I not only wear the hat of the president of the Singapore Nautical Institute, but also as the honorary professor for the Far Eastern State Fisheries University and for the Singapore Maritime Academy. So fishing is a very important thing, but the problem with the youths, they may not understand. So let me share with you, about 30 years ago, when I was a captain, I rescued an American captain with his 25 crew members. And later, we realized that the captain was being paid 5 times more than what I was being paid as a merchant navy captain. And people always thought about fishermen as very low paying, but that was a tuna boat, so it isn't. So my title today, which I've done a bit of research, because after being with FESFU, I got more intrigued with fishing. And why is fisheries important? Because it feeds the world. But when I was a captain sailing around the world, I was only carrying cargo, and I felt there was not enough fulfillment. So being with the Far Eastern State Technical Fisheries University and bringing many of my Singapore students there, they are very intrigued by the research laboratories and the food. So then we have dialogues with our own Singaporeans to find out. And yes, the old fishermen, people look at it as something dirty. So here I'm talking about ecological and economic sustainability, fisheries management. So when you look at the conventional fishermen, yes, they suffer perils of the sea. People see movies and they look at the difficulties and the kind of discomfort. But what I would like to share with you, and I'm excited to share, is that fishermen of the old is going to be replaced with the fishermen of the new, because we are not just catching simple food to feed the people, but to use technology and to look at the economic and ecological sustainability management. So on the left, you can see the old picture of the conventional fisherman, which is still there. But on the right is the technologist fisherman who is actually sitting down in the comfort of a place like us, air conditioned, and with monitoring devices. And that is the trend that is starting to build. So it has to be that way and no longer just going out and trying to catch, but to control it so there will be more sustainability. So what are we talking about? Firstly, the shipping sector is undergoing a global transformation, and it should also extend to the global fisheries sector. Why? This sector is even more important because 3/4 of the world is covered with water. And the fisheries industry is not only there to feed the people, but actually, fish is so much better for you than meat. So, looking at Maritime 4.0, where it's linked with Industry 4.0, where everybody keeps talking about it, the Internet of Things, it is part of the fourth industrial revolution. And it does manipulate the way we operate and the way we cooperate and how we integrate all aspects of digitalization. So this is even more important for the fisheries sector, where we talk about ecological and economic sustainability. The other part we talk about is, yes, people think about the conventional seaman with the waves, dirty smelling of fish. It's a dying breed because it is not about that anymore. If we want to lure youths to be fishermen, we are telling them you're going to be a technologist fisherman. You're going to use the Internet of Things. Feeding fish is at the press of a button, at the controls of the Internet. So fisheries management, to be effective, to optimize, we must use artificial intelligence. So we must embrace technology. We will ensure that the work, then when people see it, is not hard and dirty, but actually you are transformed into a high technological professional. And not only a work that you do to feed yourself in your profession, but you are nourishing the world. And yet you can do it in the comfort of an office setting. You don't even have to be at the big fisheries port that I'll show you later, but you can even be at the comfort of your home and things can be tested that way. Same, autonomous ships. More and more ships, you have shore-based operators where people can operate the vessel from the comfort of the home. So fishing is even more important because not only are we talking about fishes, we're talking about the ecological and the economic part of it. So it's much more than transporting containers or coal or grain. It's a bigger thing. So here is just to share a picture of the latest you can find is about the global seafood consumption. Now, based on information, the percentages, the farm raised was 45, but the farm raised is going to go up to 62%, whereas wild caught from a 68%, it will drop to a 58%. So the source is from FAO stat, and this shows it is, and this is the truth. So looking at the next one, let's look at the United Nations Convention for Law of the Sea. It sets out new responsibilities for the use of marine resources. So we need a global economic increase with proficient control of these marine resources. So with the commitment for sustainable exploitation of the fish stocks through the trustworthy administrative and conservation of fisheries, the ecosystem-based approaches such as the marine protected areas, the MPAs, and the slashing of the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Is that possible? Yes. Technology, satellites, everything can be traced. So you don't need guardians to chase in boats anymore. You can use technology. So again, like what I said, technology are game changers for fisheries management. It is central in attaining green growth of the sector where data collection and the scrutiny of the fish population will provide dynamic enforcement and evaluation, including environmental impacts of fisheries activities, and this will lead to effective policies being created, implemented, and enforced to sustain aquaculture. Okay, some people may say, but not everyone is a party to UNCLOS. I said yes, but most of them are. And even the Americans, yes, they are not a party to it, but they are still making use of freedom of navigation and law of the sea because they do not want to share their technology. That's why they did not sign UNCLOS. So for those who sign, then they are really looking at feeding the world, just like what Russia is doing. That's the reason why. In fact, I was in Moscow less than 2 weeks ago, and I was in Vladivostok. I really love the country, you know. So what you all are doing is good, and I use that to teach my students and look at the technology that's being developed. So what I'll be sharing later is the Chinese technology. So looking at also the other worlds, what are the rest doing? This is New Zealand. And here's a picture of New Zealand based on their sustainable aquaculture, how the industry implements things, how they assess, how they check, they report, they research, and they review. So this is just another example of countries that come together to share what they do. So fishermen now use environmental checklists to assess the performance against key indicators. So this is really the technologist fishermen. And when the youth of today see this, then perhaps the new Russian youths will be interested in this career. And it's not the old Soviet Union alone that were very tough and strong, and they were hardy going out in the seas and in the freezing temperatures. Youth of today are spoiled for choice. There are so many nicer jobs and easier jobs. But all of us know that the fisheries industry and the management is so important in feeding the world. So, what do we need to do? We need to make it simple, exciting, and safe. So, AI does the dirty work, AI does the dangerous part of it. Then the modern youth becomes a technologist fisherman who merely has to press buttons and see. Of course, they'll also be trained in emergencies to actually go in the water and all that. But at least it's not every day that you're fighting the perils of the sea. Going to the next one, the key elements of this ecological environment comes in just three simple words: MCS: monitoring, control, and surveillance. So it's an imperative part of fish operations and fisheries management. And in that, you can see there are collaborative and there are non-collaborative tools. So you have a collaborative tool like the vessel management system, the AIS, whereby you know where the boat is. In Singapore, our AI system can monitor 10,000 vessels, and we only have about 1,800. So what is it? It monitors where you are, where you're going to be. So then you ensure that people don't go into prohibited areas. And restricted areas, okay. So when you do fisheries, you ensure that you let the fishermen or use technology to catch and let the smaller fry grow. So these are the sizes. So the non-collaborative ones rely on the satellite imagery and other tools, even drones that can be used. So just to simplify, monitoring refers to the collection, the measurement, and the analysis of fishing activity, including the catch, the species composition, the fishing effort, the bycatch, what they of course discard, and the area of operation. The control, of course, involves the specification of the terms and conditions under which resources can be harvested. So the regulatory part. And to ensure that people follow it so that sustainability and the ecological cycle is not imbalanced, then the surveillance. So it involves the regulation and the supervision of fishing activity to ensure that national legislation and terms and conditions of the access and the management measures are observed. So when we talk about MCS then, but we said, of course, despite significant previous progress, the world is off track. We are behind to end hunger and malnutrition in all its forms by 2030. And it's not about any conflict, it's not about any invasions. It is about what has been happening now. Let's not look at what other people are saying. Stop looking at propaganda. Let's look at facts. That's why data analytics. So how we look at data, how we look at prescriptive and predictive is important. So it is what the world has been doing. They are slow. We need to come and use AI, algorithms for all this. So degraded ecosystems and intensifying climate crisis. Yes, they keep saying climate, climate, we're going to put more money into it. And suddenly people are going back to coal. They're starting to chop the firewood behind their house in Germany. So is it really handling? Okay, never mind. But what we're saying is increased biodiversity loss are threatening jobs, economies, the environment, and the food security around the globe. And they are also aggravated, of course, by COVID-19 pandemic and crisis and other humanitarian emergencies. So what has been the impact now? Today, based on statistics, 811 million people suffer from hunger and 3 billion, perhaps more, can't even eat properly. They have malnutrition. They can't afford healthy diets. So that's where countries with fantastic fisheries like Russia can play a part. So when we talk about that, is elevated calls to urgently transform our agro-food systems to ensure food security, to improve nutrition and secure affordable healthy diets for a growing population while safeguarding livelihoods and the natural resources around the world. So one of the things that I am looking at is to help countries like Angola, Tanzania, where they have huge fishing coastline. So the conventional fishermen must be replaced with technology, with the new systems. Then we can try to come back on track. So this information is not what I say. It's extract from page 8 of the 2022, this year's edition, the state of world fisheries and aquaculture towards blue transformation. And it's in many languages, including in Russian. I think this is one of the most important documents and important for our youth who are learning about fisheries technologies. This to them is something that everybody must be aware because it's very well written. There's no propaganda, there's no politics. It is about ecological, environmental, blue transformation for fisheries and aquaculture. So again, extracting from this important part, they said that aquatic foods are increasingly
Я прошу
recognized.
прощения, время у нас.
Unfortunately, we are very short of time. We are sorry to interrupt. Just take it into account, please.
So food securities. So we need to prioritize and better integrate fisheries and aquaculture products. Okay, so these are just statistics. You can look at it at the state of world fisheries and aquaculture is all there. But the statistics help me to understand what we need to do. So total fisheries, there was a record of 214 million tons and 178 million was aquatic animals, 36 million tons is algae, the vegetables. And the amount destined for human consumptions, 20.2 kg per capita, more than double the average of 9.9 in the 60s. So 58.5 million people were employed in this fisheries sector, including the subsistence. And it estimates that 600 million livelihoods. That is how important the fisheries and aquaculture industry is, and the products that have generated over 151 billion. Okay, of course, just add about 60, you convert to rubles. So world aquaculture, diverse, finfish, cage. So let me show the technology now. Coastal, global. So coming to it, environmental pollution, it threatens, but it can be handled. It can be controlled. So pollution by plastics, another problem, but now the world is stopping that. So there's no worries. Uncollected waste, it can be done. So coming to it, yes, this is bad, but we can have the solution. So now I want to show you the challenges for aquaculture. Fish farming. So this is one way of doing it. And this picture shows that they have antibiotics, food losses, feeding and all that if you do the normal way. And how do you handle this new sustainable development? To utilize, to prioritize. So this is what we can do. A strategic shift. We talk about the manufacturing, the aquaculture. So it includes fishing, cultivation, but the important one is personnel training and operation and the deep processing of seafood. So with this, I'll show you the final part. Ecological environment. protection from environmental pollution, protects the marine environment to strengthen this. And what can we do? We can deploy intelligent technologies, autonomous roaming cages, drones, sensors. It's all there. And the stakeholder engagement with the public, the private, and the people sector. So now the last part, just to show you what they have. This is from the Chinese, from the Wuchang shipbuilding. These huge cages are fantastic, and they are so much cheaper than the Norwegians. And this is a semi-submersible. So depending on the time of year, the salinity, it can be different heights and how fish is being fed. So this is how it is, and it's already being used in some countries. I'm also encouraging my own country to use it among the islands that we have. So this is how they look like. And this is what you call the technologist fishermen and what is there for them. So let me just finish it off with economic benefits. Crop loss will drop, equipment replacement will drop, and you will increase the continued fish supply even during monsoon seasons because you can control the depth and where you put. What about risk of fishing in rough seas? Nobody wants to be the old fisherman anymore. No more. You're sitting in a fantastic office, and fish fry breeding can be done on land. So the economies on scale is fantastic for the economic benefits. So for all this, I think you can know environmental benefits, food waste, controlling water pollution, dead fish management. So again, more pictures to show you ecological environment. And it offers this. It is really an incredible thing. And I'm sure more can replicate this technology by the Chinese. So I'll just show the fishing industry. The transformation must be there with the Internet of Things. So in conclusion, future appetites are placing great stresses on ecological, environmental, marine. People want more. So current practices and solutions are mostly traditional. We must shift towards protecting and the paradigm shift for this new technology. So the final part, financial mechanisms, governments are there to develop, and the people sector partnership. Okay, so I hope this has been illustrative, and I thank all of you for giving me the opportunity to share on the new trend of the technologist fisherman. Spicy bar.
Большое спасибо.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Thank you for your very informative input. We were very interested to listen to your presentation. Thank you so much. Again, I would like to thank our distinguished speaker for his detailed presentation. I'd like to give the floor to our next speaker, Mr. Zahar Zaharcheny, CEO, Aquaculture Group from Belarus. Can you hear us? Hello? You have the floor, please. Can you hear me? Yes, we can. I'm happy to welcome all the participants of the panel and thank the organizers for the opportunity to speak at the panel. Today I'd like to tell you about the modern equipment used at fish farms, used at different fish farms located in Belarus. So fish farming in the Republic of Belarus is quite deeply developed. There are two areas, mainly aquaculture and fish farming in natural pools. We also have a dedicated program, a state program, which is being implemented for the fish industry, covering the period from 2020 to 2030. We're planning to build modern fish farms and fish breeding complexes. To achieve all these goals, we will need cutting-edge state-of-the-art technologies and equipment. In this presentation, we're going to tell you about the most recent developments in this area. We will tell you that recently we have installed cutting-edge equipment at the fish farms in the Republic of Belarus. At one of the fish farms, we have an Iranian investor investing in our economy. So this is a company which is very modern. They built a very modern factory. We installed these very modern, compact filters at this fish farm. This is the main assembly of the filter, which is the intact module on a unified platform. This is an assembly which is controlling pools connected to basing. It includes a drum filter, as well as pumps, as well as UF sterilizer and oxygen filter, also with a control cabinet. So we just connected that to the pipeline, so we sent oxygen there, and this unit is working as one assembly. So the main components are the plastic frame, as well as the biofilter, the protein skimmer, the degas facility, degas unit, drum filter, UF sterilizer, as well as ozone generator, dosing pumps, control cabinets, surveillance system, signalization, and other elements. It also integrates other elements. We also have autonomous incubation system, which is a McDonald's system for the incubation of sturgeon. So this is the assembly which integrates a number of elements. By connecting water supply in this system, it's possible to incubate sturgeon. So this is the assembly, which includes a number of elements, including a thermal pump, a heat exchanger, a circulation pump, a UF sterilizer, and other containers. It also includes a heat exchanger, a hydraulic filter, and a thin filter. We also have an autonomous system for salmon incubation. You see these elements of the system, which includes an incubation facility, incubation cabinet, as well as a thermal pump and other elements. The incubation system has a vertical design. It includes this trays. We put fish eggs there, and then we perform an incubation. So at each of the layers, there is this fish eggs washed away and coming from top to bottom. Another example is the oxygen generation system based on the modern VSA technology, which is a vacuum swing adsorption. This system principle is based on generating oxygen thanks to vacuum. The PSA adsorption technology, which is a classic technology, requires a big air pressure, which is requiring a lot of power supply, a big compressor, which creates pressurized air. A lot of this air is delivered to the system. Then after that, it is pumped away and sent to the air. The same technology is only so this technology works at 0.5 bars pressure only. There is a vacuum pump which delivers further air to the adsorption column, so where oxygen is split from the environment, and this is how the oxygen is generated. So the main advantages is low pressure. With low pressure in the system, the oxygen can be generated in such an assembly. Low consumption of compressed air is another advantage. And low operational costs, low power consumption is another advantage. It is also mounted on a unified platform, and it's also possible to organize a remote access using the controlling cabinet and a remote system. The next example, automatic feeding system at commercial farms. It consists of a silo bunker, which is used to store and feed the feed. If we receive feed from machines, it's possible to then deliver it to the silo bunker. Then after that, if the feed is delivered in bags, then there are dedicated bunkers which are used to deliver these bags, and then get the feed out of the bags and put them to the feed preparation area. The feed preparation area, or this feed kitchen, includes a number of portions from various feed types. All this is collected, and then this mixture is sent to the feed introductor. Though you see this user interface of the system firmware, there are some snapshots I'm showing you in the screen. So this system indeed can help you deliver any amounts of feed to the needed pool, to the needed container. You can control fractions and volumes. It's all adjustable, also including via the internet in an online mode. The feed introduction is performed to the main pipeline. Then from the main pipeline there is a revolver type system used to deliver feed to the needed pond through a dedicated pipe. So this is delivered via the pneumatic feed pipeline, which delivers the needed feed portion to the pond. So you see this feed pipelines, which is a reliable system which can work at low and high temperatures, ambient temperatures. Let's now focus on fish transportation and controlling regimes of transportation. So this is the GRIF system from the Czech Republic, which is online monitoring of fish transportation. It's a dedicated solution to monitor these conditions. A customer can observe the process, it can observe the level of oxygen and temperature used in the process of delivery. In the cabin of the driver, there is a dedicated display showing different conditions in various containers. It can measure oxygen level as well as temperature in various containers. If the oxygen level drops, a valve is triggered and the level of oxygen is rectified. Indeed, this system is really very convenient for transporting fish and fish products. It's really very handy to control all the transportation parameters. Automatic fish sorting. Distinguished speaker, we are behind the schedule, so probably if you could speed up a little bit. Automatic fish sorting. Fish matters. Fish matters that are used to calculate fish. Pneumatic scales can be used to scale live fish, to weight live fish. And again, I can tell you that a modern fish farmer is a universal soldier, needs to know how to use all these different types of equipments, being able to operate it and maintain it. So we want these people to be over enthusiastic about what they're doing, to have both technical and theoretical knowledge working with the modern fish farming equipment. They need to be able to take quick decision in an emergency. They also need to be able to work with fish farming software. They need to be trained on practical cases in case of emergencies, and this is really also very important. This is it from my side. I'd like to thank you for your attention. Thank you for your review, and thank you for your presentation. We are discussing fish farmers today in this terms used, which is universal soldier, all this human orchestra, you know. We understand that our fish farmers are not narrow specialists, but very universal ones. Our next speaker is Nikolai Valerievich. We don't have that much time indeed, but we would want to hear from you as well. Please, you have the floor. Good afternoon, dear participants of the forum. I'd like to thank you for your invitation to be one of the speakers of this panel, of this first event, of this first forum. I work as head of chair of fish science and fish farming. Our chair in Belarus is one of the leading departments which trains specialists for fish farming. We are facing these challenges in talent training on a daily basis, and I can tell you very much about it, speaking about that for ages. The same is with you. So again, as for the areas, as for the themes we are discussing at this roundtable, as in politics, as in soccer or in medicine, we understand very much about it, all of us. The same is about education. Everyone tends to know how to teach people, what to teach, and what approaches should be used. So everyone knows about it. In Belarus, every new education minister launches a new educational reform. Again, this is a very painful point for all of us. It's a hot point for all of us. And again, we have heard about your challenges. We all are confident that we are right in what we're doing and what we're saying, but unfortunately, regrettably, we are more focused on this enthusiasm that we need to instill in students. We want to have very highly qualified specialists with shining eyes. This is just our first step that we could use to be able to hear each other. We want to hear each other indeed. With that, customers can have some claims for the quality of specialists. It is possible. We have such claims from our employers, from our customers, who complain about the quality of talent. Yet, on the other hand, not every customer understands the specific aspects of the education process. So we have our educational plans and standards that are the main regulatory documents guiding our work. They are the main source of developing educational programs in various disciplines. These plans, these overall guidelines are unified for the whole country. They are defined by the Ministry of Education in our country, for example. Of course, we can make some adjustments, but there are some requirements. For example, there are requirements for some educational domain, element, dimension that should be there. There are dedicated requirements for philosophy, for maths, and other disciplines that need to be trained. And again, we have some requirements for the biological part, teaching zoology and other sciences. We are currently adjusting our Belarusian plan to the requirements of fish farming. Out of the several dozens of disciplines, only 26 disciplines are directly related to aquaculture or fish farming. Out of these 26 disciplines, 12 disciplines are only specifically related to technologies, while 14 disciplines are general disciplines for fish farming, such as hydrobiology, morphology, and other disciplines. Considering all that, and considering that the time of teaching is only 4 years, we are really very restricted in terms of these boundaries, and we want customers to understand that. One more challenge in Belarus, and the same probably is relevant for your country. Generally, so we see that fish farming is an agricultural specialty, agricultural discipline, and it's not that popular. Everyone wants to work as an economist or as a manager. That's why the quality of our students is inferior, is lower. Of course, at every course, at every year, we have brilliant students, but the majority of them, on average, are of lower quality. We want to lead in fish farming. We want to have growing fish farming leaders who would lead to higher yields in production. So the overall average standard of those people we work with in universities is a bit lower than in other disciplines. And of course, it makes it harder for us to work with these people, and we need to work with what we have. In Belarus, we have this 10-point based scoring. If you get a 9 or 10, then I would say it won't be possible for these students to get a diploma. This would be my position. And again, if you have an inferior mark, an inferior score, you won't be able to work as a fish farmer. But if you get a 4 in our country, it's satisfactory and you can get your diploma. And of course, such students who get a score of 4 can be distributed to work at a fish farm because it's mandatory in our country. Again, we are restricted in this as well. I would want to require students to get a 9 or 10 score, but they are entitled. They have a right to get a score of 4, and that's it. So again, we have to finish very soon because the time is very tight. In conclusion, I'd like to mention that, again, how can we improve our work of businesses and education? First of all, we need to speak to each other differently. In 4 years, we can just prepare a dummy of a student, dummy of a fish farmer, and then afterwards the real training is done at production sites. Secondly, I would want to urge to encourage companies to select talent for themselves. It can be a targeted selection. Probably also customers could select talent for them working with local communities near the fish farm. Of course, we also need to pay more attention to industrial practices of businesses when we send our students for internships. There are some questions to that as well, and also to the leaders of these internships at enterprises. And again, the technology of developing talent is more complex than even than the technology of fish growing. But anyway, we can work with these issues on an individual basis, and this is the approach we are currently using at the moment. Thank you for your attention.
Well, dear colleagues, we have been urged to finish our session, so you may have just 1 or 2 words to add before we close this session. No comments, then thank you very much. Thank you all. Thank all the panelists and speakers. And I do hope that this roundtable discussion, I don't think it has provided answers to all the questions, but at least we do understand now that fish farmers should know how to play all instruments.